Yeah. Yeah. Australia.
And we're live. Folks. Welcome to your nightly news. Can you imagine? It would actually be the best news ever.
No,
We'd be like, you
awful.
guys saw a hummingbird.
It'd be awful.
That's the news. Oh my God, magic. So good.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amy Tangerine. This is the magnificent Cathy Heller.
Thank you, guys.
I was going to read this intro, but I wanted to pick out one thing. Did you know that her podcast, Abundant Ever After, has been downloaded 45 million times?
Oh my God.
That's incredible.
Thank you so
That
much.
is so incredible. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm not going to read this sheet of paper because look at this back of the book. Marianne Williamson, Gay Hendricks, Rainn Wilson, no big deal.
No big deal, guys.
No
you guys,
big deal.
It's not a big deal. Have you heard? No, I'm just kidding. Where were these people in 7th grade when nobody liked me? I sat alone in lunch. Everything's changed. Everything's better.
So I love that we're sitting here in Zibby's in this intimate space, and I'm going to ask you some questions that you may have not been asked before.
No math, though. I'm not good at math.
Yeah, no.
Okay, good.
We're good. First of all, besides the fact that everybody needs this book, what inspired you to write it?
Oh my gosh, it's such a big question. Okay, here's the headline, you guys. Are you ready? And you're going to know the things that I say are true because you know them already. You could all give this talk if you actually listen to your heart. So the reason I wrote this book, and you know this, you live this, you're walking magic, is because magic is real. That's why.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, magic is real. And we are so committed to this idea that things have to be hard, that we overcomplicate and we take ourselves out of the flow state. And then there's this beautiful river that was like already set in motion that works through synchronicity in the most divine way. And all it's beckoning you to do is to be your true, authentic, loving, most mystical self. And when you do that, you get everything. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And for those who believe in the magic, right? Ironically,
do you believe in magic? And I hope
did you also know that she's this amazing singer-songwriter that she has this amazing voice? And yeah. Okay. So we'll save the song for the end.
Okay, great.
As somebody who talks about creativity so much and lives it, you. It's funny that you say magic because that is my word of the year.
Oh my gosh.
And there's magic in the making, right?
Nice.
But I want to show you this because your book.
I can't with her. She does this every day.
I did this today from your book. I jumped ahead to page 200 and I found the most amazing quote.
This is so gorgeous.
Okay, you're gorgeous.
Oh my God, I can't.
But here's what I loved reading is it's so simple. Confidence is learned through courage. How did you get the courage to step up and show up as your true authentic self?
Okay, so the thing is, you guys, that growing up in my house, I was a little bit of the weird one because I have a really big imagination and I was the one who was like, do you guys see it? Do you see it? There's possibility everywhere. And they didn't really see it. It's a little bit like Matilda, right? And so I was like, oh, she's a dreamer. Oh, she has her head in the clouds. Oh, Cathy, she's all over the place. She can never find her shoes. Like I was like that kid. And it turns out that I was onto something. And so I don't know that that part took courage and confidence, but what did take courage is that along the way, the world, because people care about you and they love you so much, they want to protect you. They start to tell you like, oh my gosh, well, let me take you under my wing and like tell you the path so that you can actually succeed in life. And here's what life looks like. And there's this whole checklist of things you need to do and ways you need to be. And so what eventually did take courage was to trust my intuition. What eventually did take courage was to be like, I think you're all full of shit, actually. And then to move away from the pack is actually super hard because I think innately, my friend Mark Grove says that all day long, I love you. Maddie, look who's here. Maddie, turn around.
We're all taking pictures of you.
My daughter's best friend. Mark Grove says that all day long people are being asked a question, whether they know it or not, which is, do I live my authentic life or do I try to belong?
Yes.
And 99% of the time they choose belonging. But the problem then is they don't belong to anyone because they self-abandon. So they don't belong to themselves anymore. And then they don't belong to the other person either because the person that they chose was a character that they were playing to try to fit in. And so, oh my gosh, that took courage, especially when you start getting things right and you start behaving in a way that people praise you for it. And you're like, oh, this is the avatar that people like. They like my hair this way. They like that. In fact, when my husband and I first met, I was working for Lou Savage, just small world because Tessa's here and there's a connection there. And I was selling commercial real estate in Brentwood, okay? And my husband and I were next door neighbors and we were friends. And years later, when we started dating, I'm like, were you like into me before? And he's like, no, I liked you like as a person, but I wasn't. And I'm like, no, I mean, I wasn't into you, but were you into me? And he's like, no, because you seemed like a timeshare salesman. Like you were wearing you had shoulder pads and you had your CLK Mercedes coupe and you'd come in and out. And I one day was in that office. It's so weird that you're the person because it's so connected, of course, because magic is real. And so one day I was looking at myself in the elevator doors in this building in Brentwood selling $100 million shopping centers. Doesn't that feel like it's me? Suits me well. And I saw myself in the mirror and I started crying because I was like, Mulan, I was like, who is that girl? I don't know you. And then she talked back. No, she didn't. That would be hallucinating. That'd be weird. You guys, Cathy seemed okay. And then she just went off the rails. Now she's talking to the elevator doors. But I looked at myself and I started crying because the part I was playing was not the part I was supposed to play. And I called Rabbi Aaron and he said, because he's a big star of this book, he's got the lead role. And he said to me, what if a guitar, instead of being a guitar, was in a corner collecting dust and the middle of the guitar was holding a potted plant? That would not serve the purpose of the guitar. He's like, you have to trust in your alignment. And so that took courage because I quit my job. And when you have an okay personality, which I kind of do, you could sell ice to an Eskimo. So here I was working at 25, eating all the spicy tuna you could have. I bought a couch in Anthropology, you guys. Okay, I was doing fine. Yep, that's how well I was doing. And then I quit my job. I quit my job because I was like, I don't feel like myself. And we've all seen every good rom-com. And your favorite part is when the girl is running down the beach because she just told the truth. She just finally chose to be authentic. And you're like, do it. Fine. It's amazing. Because you want to be that person. So that was the beginning of everything great that ever happened to me. I quit that job. And then I was so happy because I remember once I quit that job, even though I had no effing clue what was going to happen to me, I thought, whatever does happen to me, I'm being my authentic self. I lived today the way I want to live it. So I was like, what's my favorite color? Orange. Where do I really want to go hang out? Here. And so I started writing music full time. And I felt like the richest person in the world. I wasn't making millions of dollars. And I had just left a world where people were exchanging millions of dollars all day long. And I was like, oh my God, some people are so poor, all they have is money. And I was like, I want to be rich, the real rich. And so all of a sudden I was playing with shakers and ukuleles and I started writing music for McDonald's and Grey's Anatomy. And I was like, oh my God, have I beat the system? I'm so happy. And people would come to my place and I'd be like, isn't it amazing? To me, it was like a mansion because the sunlight would come through the window. And every day I would wake up in the morning and I would look in the mirror and I'm like, I know that girl. That's me. That's who I came here to be. And that whole thing, the way that my music career took off, it was all magic. It was it just meets you when you are willing to dare to dream that a bigger possibility exists. It shows up in the quantum field. And so it showed up. And then what was the next crazy thing is that I came to LA because I wanted to use my voice. And a songwriter that I knew said, why don't you start a podcast? And I was like, what's a podcast? I had legit never listened to a podcast. And she's like, well, why don't I know someone who works for Adam Carolla? She sells ads for him. Her name is Maddie. And I had just had Maddie. And I was like, that seems like a coincidence. Because like I said, is it Madison or Madeline? She's like, it's Madeline. I'm like, that's my daughter's name. That's too weird. So I had lunch with her at Jones on 3rd. And she said, you should just start a podcast and see what happens. And I was like, okay, how many downloads do I need? She's like, to sell one ad, you need 12,000. And I'm like, is my mom able to go to 12,000 computers and like check it out? And then I sat in my linen closet, and just like Rainbow Bright, when I was a little kid, Rainbow Bright, she would open a door and on the other side, there'd be like a rainbow. I opened the door to my linen closet and you guys were all there in my closet. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And the reason why it was the coolest thing in the world is because just recording the podcast, I swear, as crazy as it sounds, and this is what magic is really made of, I was so happy just doing it. That's the magic. Like when you want to manifest in your life, wholeness creates wholeness, right? And so the fact that I was so in love with like, look, mom, no hands, I'm doing this. I'm just saying things because no one had to give me permission to start a podcast. I didn't wait for someone to say, you know enough now, or like you wrote a book. It's like I had no credentials other than I have something to say and I want to say it. And so I started that show. And then at the end of the first year, by the end of the first year, we had 1 million downloads and then 5 million and 10 million. And it took zero hustle. Because here's the thing, if you throw a stone in the water, it'll make a little ripple. But if you throw a big rock, it makes a big ripple. And when your energy is fully turned on, you are so enthusiastic, you're so contagious, you're so in love with life, you're so in love. Like Tom Hanks, I always picture Tom Hanks in Splash when he just fell in love with Daryl Hannah. He's like, zippity dude. He's like, Eddie. And he's walking down the street. When you're that guy, the whole world is obsessed with you because you're obsessed with the world. You're in love with being alive and you're rich. You're it. That is what abundance is. That is what abundance is. And so every time I've ever manifested something that's like beyond my wildest dreams, it's always hidden in plain sight, right in escrow already. And what turns it on is the full body feeling of just complete and sheer being in the present moment, so grateful, so savoring what it is to be alive and feeling life moving through you. Because there is nothing more potent. Like, who's the most impressive person in a room? Where they went to college, what they were? No, the most loving vibe. The person who makes so much space, who's so enthusiastic, who's making space, who's curious, like that will open every single door of your life. And so, and then people are like, well, how'd you get all these people on your podcast? I'm like, I loved them. Like I legit loved them. And people will come on my show who, you know, we've kind of like had everybody on the show. And they'll be like,
say who?
People.
Deepak Chopra, no big deal.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey,
no big deal.
John Kabat-Zinn was a big one because I love Wherever You Go, There You Are. I've like bought it so many times and given it away. I mean, really, like all the big people, I guess, have been on the show. And like even Tony Robbins, he was, oh my God, can I show? Yes. He was very scripted. Most people aren't. And then at one point I was trying to get him off his script into the moment. And so I said, hang on a minute. I go, I just want to kiss your forehead. And he goes, what? And I go, I've been to see you live. You give so much of yourself and people get their money's worth in the first hour. And I can tell that you are this little kid who has so much you want to pour in because you know what it feels like to be that kid. And he started to cry. He goes, oh my God, no one ever does this to me. Totally embarrassed. Don't know what to say next. And I was like, great. You don't have to say anything. And so I have this experience where, like when I went to interview Howard Schultz, at that time he was running for president, and I walk in and I spill my Starbucks. And I'm like, awkward, pretty awkward, yeah. Actually never spilled my Starbucks since or before, but like that was the moment. Perfect. And then I thought to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I nervous? And I thought, oh, it's because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do to impress a billionaire. The guy owns Starbucks, like what? And then I realized, hang on a minute. The only thing that's impressive is a loving and kind, present human being. And there is nobody, not Warren Buffett, not Lady Gaga. There is nobody who's like, I'm all filled up on kind, present people. I'm done about it. Like if a person walks in who's a mensch, who's genuine, everybody's like, what's up? Welcome. Show up. You're here. I'm here. So that's the doorway to like everything amazing.
So beautiful.
Cider?
You brought up so many good points, and I love the
Thank you so
direction of the positivity and these amazing experiences. But we know life is very much full of ups and downs. And you shared with me, gosh, in 2018 when we had first met, you shared with me the story that sticks with me all the time. And it's if you're sitting in a room around a table with a group of people and you're able to literally put your problems onto the table and go around the room and everybody shares what problem they're having, guess what happens? When it's time to take something off the table, you always choose your problem back. Always. And that really, I think, is a testament to what life throws at you, right? Because of course, you're full of abundance, you're full of curiosity, you're full of awe and wonder, and you have this beautiful way of savoring life, so it rewards you. What happens when you feel so low and down, and nobody's immune to struggles and hardship, right? Everybody experiences that. What would you tell somebody experiencing that?
Well, first of all, I mean, that is the video game that we're all playing. Like, that's not that interesting because we all know what that is all the time, right? My grandmother used to say, it's easy to find the bad. You have to look for the good and then you'll always find it. Like the mind, because it loves you so much, it wants to protect you. And so it's constantly playing for you. What are the worst case scenarios? Like that's what the mind is built to do that. Like the mind is built to be like, there's a saber-toothed tiger in your midst. And so this email could be dangerous. This person might not be trustworthy. You could start this business and get rejected. Like your mind is always in this fight or flight sort of mode. So that's just the given. That's the game you're playing, is that you're always up against a mind that wants to kind of show you what's the worst case scenario. And as Rabbi Aaron says, Batman without the Joker is not Batman. He's nobody, right? So the Joker is working on behalf of God because it wants you actually to succeed. That is your boxing partner that is hoping you're going to out-psych it, okay? So every movie we've ever seen, Charlie Bucket, you're like, go back, try again, get the chocolate again, right? Like, it's so easy to bow out. Like, it's just, there's no end to how much you could point to, right? But what's more interesting is, who do you get to become when you're like, oh, you don't know about me. No, you don't know. You just don't know what I'm capable of. Like, you just don't know. And then you realize that was nothing. It's like whack-a-mole. You got this one, now you got this one, now you got this one. And then what happens is you start memorizing what it really feels like to be your true self. Your true self came for that. You're like, hit me again. I got this. I got that, got that, got that, got that. And then what happens is you realize you are not this mind. You are actually the light bulb, and God is the light, and God moves through you, and God's power is so much greater than yours. And your job is just to be a vehicle for it, which means it has nothing on you, which is why when people are in flow state, Elton John can write every song. Michael Jordan can get every single, what would you say? It's not a hit. It's a basket. I'm not going to need the reference. But the point is like flow state is not about us, right? It's not about this little ego. It's actually about your soul. And so I say in this book something that Wayne Dyer said, which everybody has now repeated, which is that we do not get what we want, but we always get what we are. So I say abundant ever after is your birthright, because you are abundance. You're not a mind. You're a soul. In fact, my friend, Dr. Lisa Miller, who is unbelievable, she works at Columbia. She's been there for 3 decades. She does all this incredible research. She's been published in every academic, scientific, high-level medical journal. They recently did an fMRI on a bunch of monks, and they found that there was 0 brain activity because wisdom is not in the brain. In fact, nothing's in the brain. Everything comes from the field, right? And we are actually an orb of energy that's really like a 7-meter, it depends how magnetic you are. It depends how tapped in and turned on you are in the moment, because when you're more matter and less energy, When you're in fear, lack, shame, and doubt, you have so much cortisol in your body, you are slowed down. Your vibration, they can see it, they can measure it. You are more like matter and less like energy. But when you're in flow state, you're faster than the speed of light. And where do we create? We create in gamma. That's why if you see somebody in a writer's room, if you see Michelangelo painting, they can't even catch the idea fast enough because it's faster than the speed of light. Is that happening in the brain? No, it's not happening in the brain. So we manifest by tapping into, plugging into something that is so, it's so essential to us that everything I'm saying right now, as foreign as it sounds, it's the most real thing that anyone has said to you in a long time, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that when you go to pray, you instantly close your eyes. When you make a wish on a cake, why do you close your eyes? Because there's wisdom inside. That's what insight is. So the mind is going to go, it's like Charlie Brown's mom. It's going to be like, wah, 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 wah. Like that's every day of your life. Your job is to say, I am bigger than my mind. I am part of the great oneness that is my real identity. And by the way, James Clear said to me, he wrote this book, Atomic Habits. We were, by the way, really inspired by his artwork because he has all these atoms. And so this is like confetti that's like kind of inspired by him because, I mean, why not? Like kind of look at the person who has the best-selling book of all time and maybe copy it. No. So anyway, not really, but a little bit. So he said to me, he said, how do people create good habits? It's not from telling yourself over and over and over again, eat healthy food, you won't actually. It's from making a decision about your identity. If you say, I'm a healthy person, and you commit to that identity, you will just do the things that a healthy person does. If you say, I'm a spiritual person, you'll just find yourself going to Cathy Heller's talks because that's who you are, right? We buy brands based on identity. People don't buy an Apple because they actually do the research to look at the difference in the product. They say, Apple has convinced me that I'm a genius. So that's obviously the product because I'm creative and I'm a genius. And then they never actually do anything with it, but they want that identity. So they buy an Apple product because they want to identify with that part of who they tell themselves they are. So your greatest, most obvious identity is that you're not a body, you're a soul. So when you really get that, then everything that the mind tells you, you're like, you don't know about me because I didn't come for that. In fact, most of the time that people bow out of things, it's because they're in it for the outcome. They're in it for the ROI. Your soul's not. Your soul's in it for the experience. If there was a video game with like little gold coins, your soul is not collecting points based on the outcome. It's collecting points based on the assignment of being fully present in the moment. When people meet me, they're like, you just made me feel like I'm the only person in the world. I'm like, right now you are. This is my job. Tell me everything. What you got? Teach me. Let me open my heart to you. What do you need? Obviously, you are on my path for a reason. And so this is all that matters. This is the whole world. If you look at a bee's eye is the shape of honeycomb because the whole world is actually every moment you're in, it's a microcosm of the entire world. And if we all really got that, that is a wormhole to changing the entire world. You're not here to change the world. You're here to change the world for one person every day. And that is a whole world. And guess who that one person has to be first? You. So when you plug in, right? My husband, when we first, sorry, babe. He doesn't make a lot of purchases. I kind of do all of that. And he laughs at me because I add to cart so quick. I'm so fast that I sometimes don't measure. It's okay. So like one time I bought these two like beautiful like armchairs, like pink stripes and like cute. And they came miniature. And he goes, you didn't measure that. Oh, no, I wanted it like this. He's like, no, you didn't. So then he's like, you buy everything. You don't ask me any. I'm like, absolutely not. It slows me down. And so he's like, let me buy one thing. So I said, what do you want to buy? He's like, I'll buy the toaster. I'm like, oh, how hard can that be? Oh, it was hard. Yeah. Because he has to price shop. And I'm like, does he not know there's this thing called Amazon? You just click it, right? I've never read a review in my life. I just click and that's all. We move on, right? Maddie. This is my life. This is my house. This is what it is. So he buys a toaster. It takes him 6.5 weeks to buy it. It's fine. It's totally normal. I can't. Here's the thing with me. I'm the most impatient person you've ever, when I'm leaving the house, they know it's like Clark Kent. I'm like, I'm going to leave now. And then I'm like out the door. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to wait to have them put their shoes on. And the reason I'm going to say that, and the reason I'm going to take the time to say that as a tangent is because people say, well, when you're on your way to making the million or getting the first million podcast downloads, how can you be so patient? I'm like, because I'm not in it for the outcome. I would never make it. I'm in it for the moment. And the moment is always the best. Every moment to me is like Christmas lights. It is the best. I can have fun at the DMV because I'm needed there, you guys. I can make everyone laugh. It's the best. I like anything I'm doing all the time. And if I wasn't like that, I'd be miserable because I'm really impatient. And so thank God every moment is the best moment you could ever have. And that's really true. Honestly, ask John Kabat-Zinn, because he's like, wherever you go, there you are. Do you think because you're in Tahiti, you'll have a better moment? No, you'll still be you. Where's your mind? Where's your thought? What's your focus? How are you feeling? You're not feeling great because it's you. You're you wherever you go. So wherever you go, it's the best moment. So he buys this toaster and I can't. I'm like, it's 6.5 weeks. Just get me a bagel. I can't deal with it. Finally gets the toaster. It has like 1,000 buttons on it. I can't handle that. That's too much for me. So then I go to make the toast and then he's like, I go, it's not working. This is not working. Did you get a free toaster with the toaster? It's horrible. By the way, they used to give you free toasters. That was like a thing, maybe in the 80s or something. Okay. So he comes downstairs and he goes, you didn't plug it in. That's the problem. And I'm like, oh, you think you're so smart? So anyway, plugged it in. Here's the thing, you guys. I have coached so many people. I think thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands over 8 years. The problem is that they didn't plug it in. You plug in your iPhone. In fact, don't look. You know what charge your iPhone is at right now. I know you do. If anyone is 3. Yeah. If anybody is under 11%, that's a suicide mission. That's insane. Like, I don't leave the house unless I'm at 70. Okay. Otherwise I got to stay, got to make sure you charge it up. The thing is, you're not charged every day. And then you're like, something's not working. It's like, you're not plugged in. Why? Because people make the mistake of plugging into what's external all day long. Well, I'll just plug into my sister-in-law. I'll just plug into the traffic. I'll just plug into the news. Like, no. We don't go through our life trying to protect our energy. We need to project our energy. If you don't have 5 minutes in the morning to meet with God, to remember who you are, to plug into the infinite, to plug into infinite possibility, to plug into the fact that every day there's a buffet of all things possible. And you get to go out in the day and you know it. You can set a clock to the magic that is going to arrive in your day because it is the way that the world, the universe is built that way. If you don't have time to plug into that in the morning, you're going to have a shitty day. So you have to plug it in because a lamp without electricity, not that interesting. You not being connected to your divine light is going to struggle. But when you plug into that, it's just the best. It's literally the best.
So good. So I love that you can literally turn to any page in this book. Look, we don't truly see what is when. Oh, sorry. We don't truly see what is when we're trapped inside our mind. There is wisdom anytime you just open to a page. Tune out the small self. When we bring presence to what we do, it becomes more purposeful. If you could have everybody know one thing that you want them to take away from this book that they could do immediately, tonight, tomorrow, immediately.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the story about the radio because I think that's the most essential part of this book. I'm going to tell you that in 1 second, but I just turned to this and it says, you can have it all once you're willing to let go of the belief that you're not worthy of it. See, the big lie that your brain tells you, there's 2 lies. Your brain will tell you either you're not worthy or it's not possible. And it's so convenient because then you just stop dreaming because you're like, oh, I wasn't worthy of it. So I just stop. Or, oh, it's not possible. Why would I bother? No, you're completely worthy and it's totally possible. In fact, you can have everything you want when you let go of the idea that you can't have it. But people are not really willing to let go of the idea they can't have it. Because once you say, I do dream of this, now you're vulnerable and now you're on the hook to actually step up and receive it. And it's actually hard to receive the dreams that you dream. Dr. King, and I love this story, he got on stage that fateful day and his I Have a Dream speech, the only line that he didn't write on that page was I have a dream. Because as he walked on stage, this woman in the chorus said, Martin, tell them about your dream. And he stood up and he said, I have a dream. I have a dream. And why is that the line you remember? Because there's nothing more vulnerable than a person saying, no, it's not actually fine. It's actually so not fine because this is my dream. That is called, here's my heart. I'm putting it right in front of you. I'm totally and completely vulnerable. And that takes tremendous courage. But when you have the courage to dream your dreams come true. So how you get your dreams to come true is the most essential part of this book. And this is the answer to your question. So my editor, Simon & Schuster, was like, oh, the best part of this book is the radio. That's the best part of the book. That's the whole book. I'm like, you're right. So again, Rabbi Aaron is the hero of this book. In fact, I said to my team the other day, if I wrote this book just to give him like more of exposure, the whole thing is worth it to me. So this is what he taught me. He said in 2001, I was learning in Jerusalem, and he said, have you heard of this law of attraction thing? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he's like, what? Well, tell me about that. So I'm like telling him like what I've learned, this and that. And he's like, oh, that's so interesting. He's like, I wouldn't say the law of attraction. I would say it differently. I said, what would you say? He's like, I would say it's the law of reception. And I said, what does that mean? And he's like, well, it's actually really different because he said, you see, it's like this. If you had a radio and you put the radio on this desk and you turn on the radio, what would happen? I'm like, you'd hear music. He's like, yeah, but where was the music before you turned it on? And I'm like, oh, that's such a magical question. I've never asked myself that. And he said, well, the only answer is that it was already here. It was hidden in plain sight. And so you just needed the receiver to tune into what's already here. So it's not the law of attraction, it's the law of reception, because it's nothing that you actually have to attract from over there to over here. That's what magnets do. They attract something from one position, something from another position come together. He's like, no, it's so much more immediate. It's already right here. You actually just have to do the job called receiving what's already been given. That's the job. So I said, why did you say the law of reception? And he said, oh, because the word Kabbalah means to receive. Lekabel means to receive. So the whole journey of being a human being is to have radical reception. And then he and I started jamming out on this idea of a radio. And I said, well, you know what's interesting? If you were to tune a radio, you could get multiple songs, because growing up in South Florida, we had Y100, 102.7, but then we had 97.3 and 97.9. Now they're both 97, but very different, because 97.3 was like Jack FM. It was like Nirvana or whatever, which I never listened to because I'm an Indigo Girls person. But that was 97.3. And then 97.9 was like Celine Dion. So one was like, at the time, you guys, that was not oldies, okay? That was actually real. It's okay, it's fine. My kids sing Huey Lewis and they think this is like really old music. And then I'm like, it's very sad, it's all right, it's fine. So 97.3 and 97.9, totally different songs. Every time you're gonna get a different vibe, different kind of DJ, not even a full degree away. So I said to him, so let's go further with this. I'm like, I get it, it's right here. But if you keep moving the station, there's all these different stations. And he said, exactly. And then he said, you'll know when you're in alignment of the highest, best possibility that's already in escrow for you when you hear a love song. Because the only song that God is actually asking for you to hear is a love song. In fact, Kabbalah says that what some people perceive as darkness is interesting, because the only thing God is bringing into the world is light. However, if you had a light bulb that could only hold 45 watts and you try to shoot through at 100 watts, what happens to the light bulb? It breaks. So our job, he said, is actually to create a greater capacity to hold more light. Because the more you expand to receive, which means you open your heart, right? And we can actually measure an open heart now. We can actually measure, literally, this is what's fascinating. We can measure the vibration that's coming from a person when their heart is open, or when they're in fight or flight and they're stressed. In fact, when you're stressed, the cortisol goes up, your pupils dilate, all your blood rushes to the extremities, because you're in a fear state, okay? And there's a different vibration coming off of you that's actually very chaotic and it's very incoherent. When you're coming from a Bob Marley, like open-hearted place, your vibration is a very different speed, And it actually, if you do like a sand experiment, it will create patterns in the sand. That's how creative that energy is. That energy immediately creates in the field. That's how coherent and powerful it is. It's like shooting a laser. And so when we open our capacity to receive, all day long, you're hearing a love song. So what I just want to say about that, so we're really clear about the radio, is that as hard as it is to get this, let me just say this clearly. The reality you believe you're observing, you're creating, and all possibilities exist because God is infinite. And the reality you're living, your life, is the one you're selecting. It's the one you're selecting. It's how much you can tolerate receiving. So in order for you to tolerate more, you'd actually have to set down more of your ego and open up more to be a soul. Because the truth is, an ego cannot receive that much. Cathy Heller, that story, she can only receive a limited amount. But soul version of me, why can I receive an endless amount of love, joy, money? Because I become a conductor of it. When you're coming from oneness, you're receiving not on behalf of Cathy Heller, you're receiving on behalf of the collective. Everything that comes in becomes a vehicle for what goes out. That's why the infinity sign goes like this. So the more you come from soul state, the more you come from the oneness of God, and that place, you become a steward, you become a lightning rod. And then, of course, why would something in a garden want to thrive less? Because it affects the whole garden. If something has weeds in a garden, eventually everything will die in the garden. So you have to keep everything healthy because everything is oneness. If we are all made of atoms, we are all actually a vibration right now in this room. We look separate, but we're actually all one frequency that's all imprinting on everything else. So all day long, our job is to tune our frequency so that we can receive the greatest music. And when we tune into the wholeness that's already inherent in us, we actually start imprinting in the field something very coherent, and then the synchronicities will just be uncanny, because when you meet someone and say, we're so on the same wavelength, that's 100% true. If you're tuned to a certain station, everyone in your life will literally be the person who's listening to the same headphones, which is why we're friends, which is why anybody I know has popped into my field. So you don't move through your journey. The strategy is not, how do I figure out how to meet that person? It's, how do I change my vibration? Because then you collapse time and space, and now you're moving from a quantum realm, which is how everybody actually does it. Every one of the 1,000 people that we've interviewed on my show has a meditation practice or a prayer practice that gets them into flow state, because once you're in flow state, you're not in the little avatar that can only receive so much because of its brokenness and unworthiness. You're in the whole flow of the ecosystem. And so you'll move through walls, literally. That's what the book is about.
I love it. I love it. Are we taking questions? Yeah, we have some time for questions. Would anybody like to raise their hand and ask
Don't ask
a
me what I
question?
weigh. Although you guys are getting real good, working out every day now.
Yeah.
From the start.
What do you do when you are around, like your family or like your,
Oh my God, I love her. I love this question. She's like, but what about when you're around your family?
Yeah, like your husband, there's no, I just, you know what I'm saying. It's like they're not.
Anyone? Raise your hand. How high can you raise it?
So you try to protect it and try to do it all.
Oh my God, I
And
can't
feel
take this
like it's coming right. It's like, well, we can't afford that. And we're not going to do that. It's like you hear it right now.
Oh, well, let me just tell you this,
You know?
okay? Let me just meet you toe to toe. Okay, so here's the deal. What we perceive that's a problem in other people is because it's triggering the thing that we still have to work out. Because it's very convenient when you have someone in your life who's in scarcity consciousness to be like, it's just so annoying, you're in scarcity consciousness. But the truth is, if you're coming from abundance mindset, right, and you're living that, you can hold it. And eventually, they'll either come up to meet you because you're just telling them the truth, which is, I'm going to keep holding for all that's possible until you meet it, because you'll find it inside yourself. Or sometimes they vibrate out of your alignment. In our, she just has too much air on her. It's good. It's all good.
I'm an umbrella.
She's flowing.
I guess she's like freezing her. the Dalai Lama, I'm sure he didn't write this, but he has a Twitter account, because who doesn't? Me, I actually don't. But he wrote something on Twitter years ago, and he said, if you want to know how enlightened you are, go home for Thanksgiving, which is like perfect. It's perfect. But here is the thing, is that every bit of contrast that shows up is an invitation to reveal more. That's what it is. And so it's asking you, what do you need to look at in yourself, right? That this is activating, right? Because if you really, really fully were so secure in your sense of abundance, you just ride right through that, right? And so it's actually saying to you, you need to know this deeper for yourself, right? Mr. Miyagi, he wasn't tripped up that Daniel was getting all antsy, right? Because he just kept holding what he knew to be true, right? And when when you refuse to co-sign somebody else's scarcity, eventually they'll see that as a giant gift that you gave them, right? What happens is we don't want people to be uncomfortable. And when people start getting triggered, we tell ourselves, so do I need to shrink now so that this person's more comfortable? No. In fact, we had a moment a few years ago where I was like journeying through, my life, how much more courage I had, how much more money I was making, like whatever the stuff was, how many more opportunities I was willing, like how much more I was willing to kind of dance in the part of me that was not in control, really, right? Because all possibilities are in the unknown, which means you can't be creative and try to predict things. You have to give up control, right? Love, you can either love someone or control them. So abundance is all in the letting go of control, which actually takes a lot of courage. Ooh. So we had this moment where I came to him and said, I'm like at this precipice where like I can feel the next thing's about to like happen, and I'm like kind of holding it back. Like I remember with my second I think it was my second daughter, they're like, you need to take a break from pushing. And I'm like, I can't. Like I needed to push. I was in labor, but it was like some conversation. He's like, hold it. It's like, that's the hardest thing to do, is hold on when you're ready to grow. Like you can't, right? So I had this moment and I said to him, what if I outgrow you? And he said, you already have. And he said, and everything's fine because you keep doing you and I'm going to catch up. So people who really love you say, keep going, just keep going. And I'm still tripping out on my fear for a second, but I want you to soar. So the reason it bothers us is because when someone's in scarcity, we're like, so are you going to make me hold back from how big I can dream? No. When you just keep co-signing, because we've had moments where I'm like, we can do this. We can buy this next house. We can take this next adventure. And he's like, oh my God. Like I'm the gas and he's the brakes. Right? And we've had moments where I used to, in the early days, be like, see, this is the reason I can't expand. And then it turned into like, oh, no. This is just part of the dance we do. And by the way, I manifested it. In fact, I had a healer come over in the summer and she's like, are you a Gemini? You're an air sign, right? I said, yeah. She goes, your husband must be a water sign. Is he a Scorpio? I said, he is. And she said, you know why you've manifested everything? Because in order for you to go so tall, you have to have something that keeps you so safe and so grounded, because a tree cannot go as tall as it is without having roots that go deep into the earth, so far deep that they go into the water. And so all of that was actually a blessing, because titrate, right? Like as we expand, we teach our nervous system it's safe to go further. I can handle this. Now I can handle a bigger crowd. Now I can write another book. Now I can do more podcasts. So it's all perfect. When you second guess yourself, that's mad at the other person. But when you say, no, this is actually perfect. This is what I'm here to teach you. And you're here to teach me something else. Then it actually doesn't need to bother you. You just keep saying the truth. You keep telling the truth. It's like with your kids. Like I've had so many times with my kids, they don't want to do something. And I'm like, no, you're going to actually live through it. It's going to be challenging. You're going to show yourself you can do it. But I'm going to hold that I have wisdom and not second guess myself. And so I think that's a little bit what that's about.
Question.
Who are you, stranger? What's your name?
So you talk a lot about, and it's so great, and you're so vulnerable. You talk about a lot of the pain you had as a child growing up. And I think to myself, and I know we all think, how incredible it is to hear this spiritual wisdom that you share, this abundance in your experience. Then it makes me think, you should be writing a kid's book to start your audience younger. So the question is, when are you going to write the book for our children? You can start younger.
You
First of all,
can do that
Love
tonight.
that. Love that.
I love
Judy
it.
Fallon can do it, and Reese Witherspoon can do it. It's time for Cathy. Guys,
Oh my God, guys, because of my friend Saul, who is the reason I know Rabbi Aaron. So let's give it up for Saul. No big deal. NBD, no big deal. Saul introduced me to this project he was directing called Llama Llama, which is a kid's project. And then I wrote and sang the theme song, and it's on Netflix. And you guys can go hear me sing it. Little fun fact, little Easter egg for you.
I like it. I think we have time for one more question.
My question has to do with, as a creative, you obviously have like a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests, and sometimes you just kind of like have so many ideas coming in at you at once, and you get one idea and you're like, "Ooh, I want to do this," and then you go fully into that. But then when you start doing that, you get 5 different ideas, and then you kind of like move to the other area, and you get kind of confused, and then you kind of just like stop doing everything because you're just like so overwhelmed. I would love to hear from another creative that's been able to find the north. Like what got you there, because I feel like for me, it's really hard for me to pick one area when I know I have so many interests and I could possibly be good at different areas, but it's hard to do it all. And it's just like after a while, you're like, which one? Because it's like you equally love all of them.
Okay, so here I would say a few things. Number one, I think you have to ask yourself in this immediate moment, what's the priority? Like when you ask that question of which one, is it because you want to turn it into a business? Or is it because you want to answer a different question, which is which one is worth pursuing, right? I think when people are truly creative, you open up Pandora's box, and really creative people start out producing movies, then they design hotels, then they make shoes, then they get into real estate. Like, I think creativity is a muscle that once we develop our capacity to tap into something bigger than us, like Jim Carrey went from being like the funniest person in a movie to painting the most magnificent, that makes complete sense to me, right? So I don't know that it's even a question you have to answer which one. Like, I feel like actually the idea is that you're going to keep practicing that muscle, and you're just going to be able to activate flow state all the time. And then creative people are going to take photos sometimes. They're going to make art sometimes. They're going to make a podcast sometimes. They're going to create a logo sometimes. They're going to help other people have ideas for their business sometimes. Like James Altucher, I don't know if you know who he is. He's super creative. He's also like a chess master. He also owns a comedy club. He also has a podcast. He does a lot of things. And one of the things he does, because he's so creative, is every day he says he does something called idea sex, where he like has an idea, then has another idea, then takes those 2 ideas, makes another idea, and sends them to people for fun. So he'll be listening to somebody's podcast and say, here are 10 ideas for you. This is a book you could write, a show you could do, a person you could collab with, just for fun, by the way. That's how creative he is. That's how many ideas he has. I don't think there's an end to how much, right? I asked Guy Kawasaki, who used to be one of the chiefs at Apple. I said, how did you guys just come up with iPod that went to iPad? And he was like, what do you mean come up with it? Like all day long, all we did was riff. All we did was come up with idea after idea after idea after idea. And then the one that you know of, right, is the iPad, iMac. He's like, there was a zillion others. Now, were they bad ideas? No, just they weren't all able to be monetized. That doesn't mean they're bad. But people who are creative, like in human design, I'm a manifester. That's like my thing, right? In human design, manifestors don't even like finishing ideas. They just like coming up with them. Like if you were to ask me, all I would do all day long would be like, I want to write this song, then I want to build this house, then I want to go over here, then I want to create an idea, then I want to do a podcast, create your podcast. You're like, all I want to do is actually initiate an idea, because it's so fun to pull nothing and turn it into something. Creative people. And why do we love that? Because you feel like you're emulating God. What does God do all day long? Create stuff, right? What do you want to do? And God, in his infinite kindness, left the world incomplete so that we could finish creating it. So our favorite thing to do is create. So why do you have to choose which one? However, if you want to choose it based on something to monetize, then that's a different question. And then the answer to that question is hobbies and businesses are not the same. They're just not. Because a business and a hobby are different because of why? Revenue, economics. That's the difference. Somebody's paying you, which means it's about the other person. A business is a relationship at scale. If you want to have a good relationship, you got to study that other person. Why is Netflix and Amazon dominate? They're studying you all the time. Even if they like a series and you don't like it, they'll pull it second season. It's not about them. It's about you. A business, as Seth Godin would say, is radical empathy. So if the question is, which thing should I start because it's a business, then that's actually a beautiful question, which means you can do all your hobbies still, but the one that's your business has to have proof of concept, which means you have to go to the marketplace and say, which one of these things that I love to do would you be willing to pay for? And then that's actually a really holy thing to do. In fact, some people think that artists sell out. I don't think that's the truth at all. The David that Michelangelo created was commissioned. He didn't come up with that idea. Does that mean he's sold out? No, he used his talent to make something amazing. If John Williams is asked to write a score, does that mean he's sold out? No, he used his talent to create a score for someone else's story. Did he need radical empathy to do that? Absolutely. Does that mean he's less of an artiste? No, he's totally an artist. Being an artist and actually having a buyer has always been the way art was. Bach, Mozart, they were all commissioned to make things. That doesn't make you less of an artist. That makes you a compassionate person who says, somebody gave me a gift and other people want it. And I'm going to listen to where the thing I love to do meets the thing that people need. And I'm going to put that in the world. And so that's a different question. Which thing is a business? So in my life, I'm creative in so many ways all the time. But the thing that I wind up usually committing to that people know about is the thing that the world tells me, hot, cold, hot, 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 this, do this. Do this all the time. Do this all the time. And so then that, like, even when I was in the music world, I wanted to be like cool and write the kind of songs that would be in Garden State. Nobody wanted those songs from me, but I tried. And then the songs that the world wanted were like happy songs. And so McDonald's wanted a song and Kellogg's wanted a song. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I can still write my morose, like weird songs, but the songs that the world is asking me for are songs where I can somehow create something that sounds happy and genuine. And not a lot of people could do that. They couldn't create genuinely happy music. It all sounded contrived, and mine, for some reason, didn't. They were like, okay, that's what we want to pay you for. Does that mean I'm not being myself? No, that's an aspect of me that is something I could monetize. And then all the other stuff can be something that I do. But I want to say one last thing. Ed Sheeran says, and this is an incredible piece of advice, if you want to make brilliant things, you have to be able to tolerate making mediocre things. And that is actually the bigger question, is when you have a smorgasbord of things that you're kind of interested in, it might be that this is the thing that really lights you up and that the world actually wants from you. But in order for you to master it, you have to tolerate the fact that you're not going to start out and be Fred Astaire. You're going to need to work at it. And my first 49 songs, I would never let you hear. They were so not even mediocre. They were below mediocre. But my husband says I have the will of a small country. I was so determined to write better music. And then I did. And I really got it. And my friend, David Kopp, is not here. He's like, no, I watched you. He's like, I literally watched you go from I was being nice in a co-writing session to oh my God, you're my favorite person to write with, right? And Ed Sheeran said, have you ever been to a log cabin? You're like, no, we haven't. I know that was a weird example, but have you ever been skiing and you go somewhere and no one's turned on the faucet for a while? You go to turn on the faucet, the water runs little brown water. But if you leave the faucet on, it gets clearer and clearer. And Ed Sheeran said, you have to write your way through that brown water. You have to have the courage to write your way through that water until you write something brilliant. And your first 10 pieces of pottery and your first 100 podcasts, they're not your best. And so then it's a question of is it really about choosing a thing, or is it really about being willing to master something, to really master a craft? And we live in a time where people publish things so often, they post things so often, that there's so much being shipped, there's so much work being shipped, that we don't give ourselves the honor of and the grace to actually sit and marinate on something. And the truth be told, I said something really controversial today. I did. Some people got mad at me. And this is what I said. I said, listen, I went and I took my 2 older girls to see Taylor Swift last year. And I did tear up at the beginning because I thought that was so mesmerizing that she could come out and hold that arena. And I will just give her the credit for like this just magnificent, larger than life, and the positivity. The positivity, if we could have collected the positivity in that arena, it could have cured cancer. Like it was so net positive. That was amazing. Now, the music though, okay, in all of those songs, is there one sound of silence? No. In all of those songs, is there one Joni Mitchell, both sides now? No. And it's because we've gotten to a place where we are making things all the time over taking the time to master something. And so we make tomatoes all year long, and that's why they taste like shit. If you go to Italy and you go to a little town that has a harvest once a year when it's harvest season, the tomato doesn't need salad dressing because it tastes so good because it's composting in the land. We are not resting and we are not patient. And so what we make doesn't have anything in it. And then anyone who's already ahead of us, who's already made something that they've mastered, we're like feeling behind. No. Jason Mraz told me, it's the last thing I'll say on the creativity. Jason Mraz told me that when he moved to LA, he started getting invited to all of these things like premieres and shows, and people wanted him to do all this stuff. And he was getting so anxious and so distracted. And he wrote the song, I'm Yours. And then his record label was like, write that again, write another I'm Yours. And so he would try to write it again, even though he first wrote it from being inspired. So then every song that he wrote to try to write it was like an alien with 3 heads. It just sounded insanely horrible. So he left LA and he moved to an avocado farm because he said, if you have a gift, you need to spend time with it. And you need to let it write through you. And so most of the time, he's like, I go into my studio and I mess around and I just play. And when something is meant to be shown to the world, I'll know. And so then whenever he's really ready, he's usually feeling like, no, this is actually something. And so I feel like creativity, there's the Instagram world of creativity every single day that's fast, that is mostly noise with nothing really timeless and lasting, or you get to be Mozart. And your great-grandchildren, their great-grandchildren will still be listening to Mozart, and none of our great-grandchildren will be playing Bad Blood. They just won't. But does that mean she doesn't get credit for like all of the good other parts of the? No, of course, that's not what I'm saying, right? There's like a tremendous amount of courage and gumption and magic that goes into like that. But creativity is a muse, and it needs time, and it needs you to honor what really is your calling, right? And so I think that question is, I would first of all make a list of the 5 things, close your eyes, and then which one gives you butterflies? That's the one that you can bank on, that you should be willing to write your way through the messiness, and it will come to you. Like it will come through you because it's not coming from here anyway. It's going to come from here. And then you'll do 15 other things as well.
We could all listen to you all night.
Thank you
Good
guys
thing
so
you have a
much for
podcast.
coming out in the middle of an LA trafficy time. I can sign books for you.
Yay!
We have plenty of books up here, so feel free to buy, sign.
I mean, there's not just 3 books.
There's not just 3.
And that 8 behind you.
Can I take this off?
Markers.
So the process is buy the book first, and then
Come sign.
and then come get it signed. The Life Impossible. I love him. The Midnight Library is amazing.
So anyway, this is it's still in bar.
I think your Mimi's behind you.
Oh, sorry. It's up to me.
Just so you're not on a hot mic anymore. You know, you can say whatever you want, you know? That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, I don't even
I